Blake moved through the dusty stacks of the town library with a grace born of silence. Orphaned young and raised in foster homes, books had become her quiet refuge, a place where she could disappear into other lives. She never imagined that a simple charity book drive would change the course of her own. It was a warm Saturday morning when Ronald Sterling walked into her world. Tall, poised, and clearly not from her side of town, he didn't look like someone who lingered around books. But he was there to represent the Sterling Foundation. Amanda caught his eye as she knelt to reshelve a stack of children's classics. Their fingers brushed when he offered to help, and for a moment, they both paused. "Ronald Sterling," he introduced himself with a polite smile. Amanda gave only her first name, nervous of what her surname might mean to someone like him. Yet he didn't ask. In the days that followed, Ronald found more reasons to return. He claimed it was for the ongoing charity efforts, but each visit lingered longer than the last. Amanda tried not to overthink it, but her heart betrayed her every time he laughed at one of her shy remarks or leaned in a little too close to see what she was reading. She never thought someone like him would even notice someone like her. But Ronald wasn't like the other men she'd encountered. He was patient, curious, and genuinely kind. One late afternoon, as the sky turned amber and the library prepared to close, he lingered by the door. "Do you walk home alone every day?" he asked. She nodded, clutching her bag. "Then let me walk with you today," he said gently. That evening, as they walked side by side beneath the purple-tinged sky, Amanda felt something stir deep within her, something dangerously close to hope. Amanda had never laughed so much in her life. Not the nervous kind of laughter that masked discomfort, but genuine belly-deep laughter that snuck up on her like a song she thought she'd forgotten. Ronald had a way of drawing her out, of making her forget just how different their worlds were. Their walks home became a quiet ritual, sometimes filled with stories from their pasts, sometimes wrapped in the peacefulness of simply sharing space. One evening, they sat on the curb outside Amanda's small apartment building, legs stretched out as the streetlights flickered overhead. "What did you want to be when you were 10?" Ronald asked, plucking a leaf from the gutter. Amanda smiled faintly. "A librarian." "I guess I didn't dream that big." Ronald tilted his head. "Or maybe you just dreamed in a way the world needed more of." Her heart fluttered, not from his words, but the sincerity behind them. In return, Amanda learned to see beyond the Sterling legacy. Ronald wasn't just the polished man in tailored suits. He was the boy who had lost his father young, the man who felt suffocated by expectations, the son constantly measured by a mother who rarely blinked approval. She listened without judgment as he told her about late-night boardroom meetings and the loneliness of penthouses that echoed too loudly. In the dim light of her kitchen, they often shared tea. He would sit on the other side of the small wooden table while she prepared warm mugs with honey and milk. "You look at me like you're waiting for the catch," he once said, his voice low. "It's not that," Amanda replied, turning the spoon in her cup slowly. "I just keep wondering how long this will last before someone reminds you that I don't belong." Ronald reached across the table and placed his hand gently over hers. "Amanda, they don't get to decide that. I do." For the first time in years, she let herself believe him. The first time Amanda entered the Sterling estate, she knew she was unwelcome. Everything about the house felt cold, like a museum where affection had been banned. Josephine Sterling stood in the grand foyer like a queen guarding her throne, elegant and distant in a pale blue dress that matched her icy stare. "So, this is the girl," she said, as though Amanda wasn't in the room. Amanda offered a soft greeting, but Josephine only looked her over slowly, as if evaluating an object she might one day have to discard. Ronald, ever the peacemaker, wrapped his arm around Amanda's waist. "Mother, this is Amanda Blake." Josephine's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I see." At dinner, Amanda made the mistake of complimenting the table setting. "We don't discuss furniture, dear," Josephine replied coolly, her fork gliding across fine porcelain. Amanda swallowed her shame. Over the next few weeks, Amanda tried to win Josephine over, thinking kindness might disarm her disapproval. She sent handwritten thank you notes, offered to help host luncheons, even brought Josephine a book she thought she might enjoy. But nothing worked. One afternoon, Amanda overheard Josephine on the phone in the garden. No, she's not suitable, an orphan with no name, no ties. She has nothing to offer him, she'll drag him down. Amanda stood still behind the hedge, unable to breathe. That night, she confronted Ronald. She'll never accept me, Amanda whispered. Ronald pulled her into his arms. Then we won't ask for her approval. But Amanda saw the hesitation in his eyes, the subtle way he looked away. Josephine wasn't just a mother. She was a gatekeeper to everything Ronald had ever known. And Amanda, no matter how fiercely she loved him, was slowly beginning to feel like an outsider in a life she hadn't been born into. It was at a Sterling Foundation gala that Amanda first met Sylvia Hartman, elegant, poised, and dazzling in a scarlet dress that hugged her figure like it was tailored from ambition itself. She was introduced as Josephine's old friend's daughter, but Amanda quickly understood that Sylvia was more than that. The way Josephine beamed as Sylvia spoke, the way their arms linked as if rehearsed, it all felt calculated. Amanda stood quietly beside Ronald, feeling invisible. "I've heard so much about you," Sylvia said with a smile that didn't quite touch her lips. "Ronald has unique tastes." Amanda forced a laugh, then excused herself to the restroom, her chest tight with something between jealousy and dread. Later that night, Amanda and Ronald stood on the balcony overlooking the garden. The music from the ballroom hummed faintly behind them. "Did you know she'd be here?" Amanda asked. Ronald looked startled, then defensive. "Mother invited her. I had no idea." Amanda leaned against the railing. "She's perfect, you know. The right background, the right name, the right everything." Ronald stepped closer, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I didn't fall in love with her, Amanda. I fell in love with you." She looked away, tears threatening to fall. "But your mother wishes it were her." He sighed. "My mother wishes for a lot of things. Doesn't mean she gets them." Amanda nodded, but the seed of doubt had already taken root. The longer Sylvia lingered in their lives, the more Amanda feared Josephine had just begun playing her final hand. The lake shimmered beneath a golden sky as Ronald guided Amanda down the narrow wooden dock that stretched into still waters. Autumn had just begun to whisper through the trees, brushing their leaves with amber, and the quiet rustle surrounded them like music. Amanda, in a simple cardigan and jeans, looked out at the horizon while Ronald stood behind her, fidgeting with something in his jacket. "You know," he began nervously, "I used to come here with my father when I was a boy. He told me something once, that when you find the person who calms your soul, you hold on, no matter what." Amanda turned toward him, brows raised. "Is that your way of saying I calm your soul?" she teased gently. Ronald smiled and slowly dropped to one knee. Amanda froze. "No, Amanda, this is my way of saying I want to build a life with you. Will you marry me?" Her hands flew to her mouth as tears instantly welled in her eyes. The moment Amanda whispered, "Yes," Ronald slid the ring onto her trembling finger. They embraced under the fading sky, neither noticing the quiet click of a phone camera from the trees behind. That night, they returned to the lake house, a private retreat Ronald had prepared for them. He had stocked the fridge with Amanda's favorite snacks and lined the hallway with small photographs from their earliest dates. Candles flickered on the dining table as they danced barefoot in the living room, giggling and swaying to soft music. Amanda leaned her head against his chest and whispered, "Are you sure?" Ronald kissed the top of her head. "I've never been more certain of anything." Unbeknownst to them, Josephine had already seen the engagement photos forwarded by a trusted staff member. And in the Sterling mansion she sat silently, a single photograph of Ronald in her hand, her fingers tightening with cold resolve. Amanda and Ronald believed they were building a future, but far away, someone was already plotting its quiet destruction. The weekend was meant to be a celebration of love, an escape from everything and everyone. Ronald had insisted they spend a few days at the lake house, just the two of them, to talk about wedding dates and dream about the future. Amanda had packed her favorite books, hoping to read by the fireplace, while Ronald brought old photo albums he hadn't looked at in years. But when they arrived, they were greeted by something unexpected: staff members polishing the patio, a car parked near the back, and the unmistakable sound of Josephine's voice coming from the kitchen. "Mother," Ronald said, visibly confused. Josephine turned, all warm smiles and feigned surprise. "Darling, I just thought I'd oversee the preparations. A sterling family engagement deserves refinement." Amanda stood beside him, a knot growing in her stomach. Ronald tried to make the best of it, assuring Amanda it was only for a day. But Josephine lingered. She supervised the meals, questioned Amanda's wardrobe, and insisted on reviewing the guest list. "Are we inviting anyone from your side, Amanda?" she asked at lunch. Amanda kept her voice even. "I don't have any family." Josephine sipped her wine. "Of course. That does make things simpler." That night, Amanda tried to keep smiling, but her shoulders drooped beneath the weight of unspoken tension. Ronald rubbed her back as they sat by the fireplace. "I'm sorry. She shouldn't be here," he muttered. Amanda looked into the flames. "Maybe she never really left. Maybe she's been between us the whole time." Ronald reached for her hand. "After this weekend, I'll talk to her. Set clear boundaries, I promise." Amanda nodded, though her heart remained uneasy. Josephine had not come to visit. She had come to watch, and perhaps to strike. The third night at the lake was colder than expected. A strange chill filled the air, and Amanda, who had spent the evening watching stars from the deck, returned inside feeling suddenly weak. Ronald was in the study, reviewing documents he needed to sign for a company acquisition. Amanda poured herself a glass of water from the kitchen, unaware that Josephine had earlier insisted on preparing all the refreshments that evening. Within minutes, Amanda's head began to spin. Her vision blurred, her stomach churned, and the glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. She clutched the edge of the counter, gasping. "Ronald?" she called faintly. But her voice was drowned out by the crackling of the fire and distant classical music playing in the background. Stumbling toward the front door, she pushed it open and stepped into the night, desperate for air. She barely made it to the dock. The lake swayed quietly beneath the moonlight. Amanda gripped one of the posts and tried to steady herself. Behind her, two dark-suited men emerged from the shadows. They didn't speak. One wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, while the other pressed a damp cloth to her face. Amanda's knees gave way, and everything went dark. Inside the house, Josephine stood near the window, watching without blinking. Moments later, she gave a quiet nod to one of the staff, who picked up Amanda's dropped scarf and handed it to her. "Tell them she fell, that it happened too fast. Then call the authorities." She folded the scarf in her hands and smiled faintly. The poor girl must have slipped. By the time Ronald came looking, Amanda was already gone, her shoes near the edge of the dock and her necklace left dangling on a branch by the water. Josephine sat calmly in the living room, a look of carefully constructed shock painted across her face. The lake was silent when they pulled Amanda's scarf from the water, clinging to a half-submerged branch like it had been caught mid-flight. Divers combed the lake for hours, but there was no body, just her shoes on the dock and that delicate gold necklace she always wore, tangled in the reeds. Ronald refused to leave. He waded waist-deep into the water, calling her name with a hoarse voice until his legs gave out and he had to be pulled back to shore. Josephine, ever composed, stood by the officers and gently pressed a hand to her chest. She must have slipped. Such a tragedy. "We were just talking about wedding dates." The words made Ronald flinch. He stared at his mother like she was speaking another language. She wouldn't go near the water alone at night, he argued, desperation lacing every syllable. But the authorities gently insisted there was no sign of foul play. And when they found no body after 2 days, the case was quietly closed as a presumed drowning. The funeral was surreal. Ronald refused to have it at first. But Josephine insisted it was what Amanda would have wanted. She arranged a closed casket service, claiming it was symbolic, a way to let go. Ronald stood before an empty coffin, numb, his eyes scanning the pews for a face he would never see again. He couldn't believe it. Amanda, with her warm voice and quiet strength, was just gone. As the priest spoke of God's mysterious ways, Ronald clutched the necklace the divers had retrieved and held it like a lifeline. After the service, he locked himself in his apartment for 3 days. "She wasn't supposed to leave," he whispered into the darkness, again and again. Meanwhile, Josephine greeted mourners, offering gracious smiles and practiced grief. To the public, she was the picture of sorrow. Behind closed doors, she burned the only photograph she had of Amanda and whispered, "You were never meant to stay." Amanda awoke in a strange room with white curtains fluttering in a salty breeze. Her head ached, and her body felt heavier than it should. She tried to sit up, but her limbs betrayed her. A woman with stern eyes and a kind mouth entered and offered a glass of water. "You're safe, rest," she said softly. Amanda struggled to remember images of the dock, the cold night air, the cloth on her face, but her mind was foggy. Days passed before she could stand. The woman introduced herself as Clara, the caretaker of a modest seaside boarding house. "A client of mine brought you here. Said you'd need shelter and silence." Amanda asked questions, who brought her, why, but Clara remained vague. Then one morning, a man in a suit arrived with a letter. Amanda opened it with trembling hands. It read, "Stay hidden or he loses everything. I saved him from you. Don't come back." There was no signature, but Amanda didn't need one. The realization hit her like a wave crashing onto stone. Josephine had orchestrated everything. Her fall, her disappearance, even this exile. Her hands trembled as she clutched the paper, the ink smearing beneath her tears. She asked Clara for a phone, but the woman gently refused. "They said you'd be safer without one. It's for your protection." Amanda knew then that she was not a guest, she was a prisoner wrapped in kindness. That night, she sat by the window and watched the moon rise over the water, thinking of Ronald. Was he mourning her? Had he searched? Or had he already been convinced of her death? She had no way of knowing, but something deeper churned inside her. She felt sick, weak, her body strange. Days later, Clara placed a worn calendar and medicine on the table. Amanda stared at the dates, and her fingers went numb. She was late, very late. Her hand instinctively moved to her stomach. And in that silent, heartbreaking moment, Amanda understood she hadn't left the lake alone. She had taken something of Ronald's with her. Amanda stared at the flickering streetlight outside the bus window as the coastal town rolled into view. She had no money, no friends, and now no identity. Clara had given her a small envelope with enough for a one-way ticket and a warning. "Don't try to find him. He's safer not knowing." With a torn duffel bag in hand and a hollow ache in her chest, Amanda stepped off the bus and into a place that smelled of salt and wood smoke. She found lodging in a rundown boarding house above a bakery. The owner, Mrs. Perry, was an elderly widow with warm eyes and a sharp tongue. She took one look at Amanda's trembling form and said, "You look like someone who's been buried and dug her way out. Come upstairs before you faint on my steps." Amanda collapsed onto the bed that night and cried silently into the pillow. She hadn't just lost Ronald, she'd lost her voice, her safety, her very name. Weeks passed, and Amanda, now calling herself Rhonda Hayes, found work washing dishes at a diner and sewing hems for Mrs. Perry's old clients. The pregnancy grew quietly inside her. At night, she'd cradle her stomach and whisper, "You're not alone. I'm still here. We're still here." Mrs. Perry noticed the changes and never pried. But one night, as they folded laundry together, she gently said, "I don't know what you ran from, dear, but whatever it was, it didn't win. You're still standing." Amanda smiled faintly, the first smile in weeks. The baby gave her a reason to keep going, a reminder that despite the cruelty, life had chosen to bloom within her. She avoided newspapers, televisions, and anything that might show Ronald's face, but she never forgot him. Every time she saw a couple walk by holding hands, or a man buy flowers on the street, she thought of him. And even though her name had changed, Amanda knew the past was not finished with her. It was only waiting for the right day to rise again. The coastal hospital was small, quiet, and smelled of antiseptic and sea air. Amanda labored through the night, gripping Mrs. Perry's hand as the waves of pain came and went. No family waited outside. No father paced the hallway. Just Amanda, gritting her teeth, whispering prayers, and holding on to the fragile promise that this child would give her purpose again. At dawn, a single cry pierced the silence, and the nurse placed a squirming baby boy into her arms. Amanda stared down at him, stunned by the full head of dark curls, the tiny nose, and the familiar furrow between his brows. "Hello, Tyler," she whispered. "You don't know it yet, but you saved me." Mrs. Perry stood behind her, wiping a tear from her cheek. "He's got the eyes of someone who won't be easy to lie to," she said. Amanda smiled faintly, holding her son close. "Good. He'll need them." The first few weeks were a blur of sleepless nights, swaddled cries, and aching arms. Amanda worked hard to hide her grief beneath motherhood. She'd hum lullabies during 3 a.m. feedings and whisper stories into Tyler's tiny ears about make-believe castles and brave knights. But in her heart, she carried a storm. She often sat by the window as Tyler slept, clutching a torn photo of Ronald she had carefully preserved in a book. "You have his stubbornness," she told Tyler one night, brushing his cheek. "And if you ever meet him, I hope he's the man I thought he was." Mrs. Perry, ever watchful, helped raise the child with patience and humor, calling herself Granny P and spoiling Tyler with handmade quilts and warm bread. Amanda never spoke of her past, not even when nightmares jolted her awake. But every time she looked into her son's eyes, she knew she had to stay strong. She hadn't survived to live in shadows, she had survived to give Tyler a future. By the time Tyler turned 1, Amanda had learned to exist without fear dictating every breath. She stitched dresses by hand in the back room of Mrs. Perry's boutique and cleaned the diner floors at dawn. The coastal town slowly came to know her as Rhonda, the quiet seamstress with the beautiful baby and sad eyes. She built routines like walls, anchoring herself in work and motherhood. Each morning she would dress Tyler in second-hand sweaters and walk him along the pier, pointing at boats and counting seagulls. "That's the ocean's lullaby," she whispered when he fussed. "It keeps the past far away." Mrs. Perry, now more mother than landlady, encouraged Amanda to leave the house more often, to meet people, to try again. But Amanda couldn't shake the fear. Too much had been taken. Too much had nearly destroyed her. Still, Amanda found small joys, like the way Tyler clapped when the bakery bell jingled, or how he'd chase Bubbles with squeals of laughter. Sometimes, when Mrs. Perry was busy, Amanda would sneak to the local bookstore just to be near the smell of pages. She'd never touched the newspapers, but she couldn't stop herself from scanning headlines as they passed. One winter evening, as she folded laundry, Mrs. Perry looked up and said gently, "You haven't smiled properly in a year. Maybe it's time to stop surviving and start living." Amanda stared at the bundle of baby socks in her lap. "I'm trying," she said softly. "But every time I start to breathe, I remember how fast everything was stolen. How I was stolen." Mrs. Perry touched her shoulder and didn't say anything more. Outside, the sea roared against the shore, and Amanda held her child tighter, whispering, "One day when you're ready, we'll rewrite our story. But not yet, not yet." As Tyler grew, Amanda began noticing things that caught her breath. His proud chin when he was angry, the way he tilted his head when thinking, and the stubborn way he refused help even when he clearly needed it. One afternoon, when he was 4, he came home from the pier with a skinned knee and a seashell clutched in his fist. "I didn't cry," he said firmly. Amanda knelt beside him, cleaning the wound with practiced hands. "Of course you didn't," she replied, though her heart ached. His resilience reminded her of someone she tried so hard to forget. That night, as he lay asleep, Amanda retrieved the small photo she kept hidden in a book spine, Ronald's face staring back at her with the same serious eyes. "You look just like him," she murmured, brushing Tyler's curls. "But I hope you never learn how much that hurts." Tyler's questions started innocently enough. "Why don't I have a daddy?" Was he brave? "Does he know my name?" Amanda had prepared for this, but it didn't make the answers easier. "He was kind," she would say, avoiding anything more. When Tyler asked if he could draw a picture for him, Amanda smiled and helped him fold the paper into a boat and send it down the stream behind the house. The sea might find him, she lied gently. Later that evening, Mrs. Perry found Amanda sitting silently in the kitchen, tears slipping down her cheeks. "You can't protect him from everything," the older woman said softly. Amanda shook her head. I don't want him to know he was left behind, even if it wasn't by choice." Perry gave her a long look. "One day, the truth will come. You can either let it shatter him, or prepare him to face it." Amanda wiped her face and nodded. She wasn't sure how to prepare her son to meet the man she once loved, but she knew the day was coming. The Ronald Sterling, who once smiled beneath sunsets and whispered dreams to Amanda, had become a man most people couldn't reach. In the years since her disappearance, Ronald buried himself in the family empire, expanding Sterling holdings with the cold precision of a man chasing something he couldn't name. Business meetings replaced date nights, and strategic mergers replaced conversations about happiness. He smiled when expected, nodded when necessary, but behind closed doors, he drank his coffee alone in silence. His office was immaculate, as if disorder might betray a crack in his armor. Even Sylvia, who occasionally dropped by unannounced, noticed. "You don't laugh like you used to," she said once, twirling a crystal wine glass in his penthouse. Ronald had shrugged. "I don't find much worth laughing at." The truth was simpler. Joy had long stopped visiting him. He never spoke of Amanda, not to friends, not to colleagues, not even to Sylvia. But her absence lived in him like a shadow that trailed his every step. He still kept the necklace they had recovered, hidden in a drawer beneath his cufflinks. Late at night, when he couldn't sleep, he would take it out and hold it until the metal warmed against his skin. "Why did you leave like that?" He'd whisper into the dark, unaware his mother was still controlling more than he realized. Josephine, ever composed, had kept the truth buried deep. "It was a tragedy, but you've survived," she told him during a family dinner. "Now it's time to move forward." Ronald had nodded, not because he agreed, but because he didn't know how to argue anymore. What no one could see was the man the world admired was still frozen on that dock, staring into the water, searching for a woman he could never bury properly. The announcement came on a spring morning, delivered by glossy magazine covers and crisp white invitations. Ronald Sterling engaged to Sylvia Hartman ran across every society page. Sylvia's smile beamed from the photos. She wore the sterling sapphire engagement ring like a crown. Josephine had organized the press event herself, standing beside the couple as cameras flashed. "They're the future," she said to reporters, her hand resting firmly on Ronald's arm. "Ronald, ever the perfect son," said Little. When asked what made Sylvia special, he replied with a diplomatic smile, "She understands the world I live in." Behind the charm, though, he barely heard the words. He had agreed to the engagement not from passion, but from exhaustion. He had been waiting 5 years for a ghost to return, and ghosts, he had finally accepted, don't come back. Miles away, Amanda stood outside a small convenience store, Tyler holding her hand when she saw the headlines staring at her from the newspaper rack. Her breath caught, her heart thudded violently, and for a moment the world narrowed into silence. Sylvia's radiant face and Ronald's hollow eyes stared back at her. Amanda didn't speak. She simply picked up a carton of milk, paid for it, and walked home with Tyler asking questions the whole way. That night, she sat alone at the kitchen table, the newspaper folded in front of her. "So it's true," she murmured. He moved on. Mrs. Perry found her hours later, still seated, eyes unfocused. "You all right, dear?" Amanda looked up and forced a smile. "I'm fine," she whispered. "He's marrying the woman who always belonged in that world." She didn't cry, but Perry knew better. She poured her a cup of tea, then sat quietly beside her, knowing that sometimes silence held more comfort than words ever could. Amanda couldn't sleep for nights. The image of Ronald's engagement photo haunted her even behind closed eyes. She tried to distract herself with work, with Tyler's laughter, with late-night chores, but nothing silenced the bitterness now rising in her chest. It wasn't jealousy, it was betrayal. Not just Ronald's, but the world's. She had done everything right. She had survived, rebuilt, loved, and kept silent for the sake of a man who was never even looking for her. One evening, after putting Tyler to bed, she finally told Mrs. Perry the entire truth. Every piece, the lake, the drugging, the forced exile, the pregnancy. Perry listened with wide eyes and a trembling hand over her mouth. "Lord have mercy," she whispered when Amanda finished. "They buried you while you were still breathing." Amanda nodded. "And now I'm supposed to just disappear again while they celebrate?" Mrs. Perry sat forward, voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "You can't carry this forever, Amanda. If you don't tell your truth, someone else will write your ending for you." Amanda shook her head, her voice hard. "What would I even say? Hi, Ronald, remember me. I didn't die, I was erased." Perry reached for her hand. "You owe him the truth, but more importantly, you owe yourself peace." That night, Amanda sat by the open window and watched the moonlight ripple across the water. The anger in her chest burned hot, but beneath it was something even more powerful, a resolve she hadn't felt in years. She had stayed away for Tyler's safety, for Ronald's future, for a lie she never chose. But Amanda was done hiding. She couldn't change the past, but maybe, just maybe, she could reclaim what was left of her name. Amanda sat at the kitchen table long after midnight, a blank sheet of paper before her and a pen gripped tightly in her hand. Words refused to come easily, but her heart felt full of unsaid things. Slowly, she began writing. Ronald, I never meant to disappear. That night at the lake wasn't an accident. Your mother, she took me. She paid to keep me away. I woke up in a stranger's room, scared, confused, pregnant, and alone. Her handwriting trembled as tears dropped onto the page. She continued, Our son's name is Tyler. He has your stubborn chin and your serious eyes. I never stopped thinking of you, but I stopped hoping you'd find me. She paused, reread the paragraph, then folded it quietly. She placed the letter in an envelope, addressed it with shaking fingers, and set it on the table. For a brief moment, she imagined Ronald reading it. Would he believe her? Would he come? The next morning, Amanda stared at the letter as sunlight poured across the floorboards. Tyler played in the corner with his crayons, humming to himself. Amanda stood, picked up the envelope, and walked toward the door. But just as her hand reached for the knob, something inside her recoiled. Doubt gripped her. What if this only opened old wounds? What if Ronald dismissed her as a ghost from a life he no longer wanted? She pressed the envelope to her chest, breathing heavily. Mommy, Tyler called out. Where are we going? Amanda turned back to him, eyes brimming. Nowhere, baby, not yet. That afternoon, she burned the letter in the fireplace, watching the flames devour her truths. She had almost reached out, almost. But the time wasn't right, not until she could look him in the eyes and say it herself. Rain drizzled lightly as Amanda walked home from the tailor shop with Tyler's tiny jacket folded under her arm. The streets smelled of wet stone and roasting corn. She passed a bulletin board outside the town post office, where a printed flyer flapped in the wind. A name caught her eye, the Sterling Estate. She stepped closer. A catering company from the city was hiring temporary staff for an exclusive wedding event. No names, just the venue, date, and pay. Amanda's breath caught in her throat. Her heart began to pound in her ears. She pulled the flyer down slowly and clutched it to her chest. They're getting married there, she whispered. At the estate. That night, Amanda sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the flyer as Tyler slept soundly in the next room. Her hands trembled, but her resolve had never been clearer. She didn't need to think long. Something inside her clicked. For years, she had been buried under silence, but now the silence itself was suffocating. This was her chance, not for confrontation or spectacle, but to be present. To see him. To let him see her. She didn't know what she'd say, if anything at all. She just knew she had to go. Amanda folded the flyer and placed it inside her wallet. The next day, she spoke with Mrs. Perry in the kitchen. They're hosting a wedding at the estate. Perry looked up sharply. You mean his wedding? Amanda nodded. I want to go, not as a guest. I want to work the floor, serve the wine, walk through that house like a ghost he can't ignore. Perry hesitated. And what if it breaks you all over again? Amanda held her chin high. Then at least I'll break on my own terms. It wasn't revenge she wanted, it was visibility. She wouldn't let her story end in a shadow. Not this time. Rhonda, he asked, rising to greet her. Didn't expect to see you here. Amanda smiled faintly. I heard you're short-staffed for the wedding. Robert scratched the back of his neck. We are, yeah, you want in? She nodded, voice low. Just for one day, no questions. I'll work quietly. I don't need anything fancy. Robert studied her for a moment. This about that man you never talk about. Amanda didn't flinch. I just need to be there. I promise I won't cause trouble. He exhaled slowly. All right, you've always been good to my aunt. You've got one shift. Black uniform, hair pulled back, keep your head down. Understood? Amanda thanked him and stepped out into the sunlight, her chest tight. The decision had been made. There was no turning back. That evening, she packed her things with trembling fingers, her plain black shoes, her name tag clipped with Rhonda H., and a small ribbon she had once tied around Tyler's wrist as a baby. She tucked the ribbon in her pocket like a talisman. When she got home, Tyler was drawing superheroes on scrap paper. Where are you going, Mommy? He asked, eyes curious. She knelt beside him, brushing a curl from his face. I have to help someone serve a big party, but I'll be back before the sun wakes up. Tyler tilted his head. Is it someone you used to know? Amanda blinked back emotion. Yes, someone who used to know me too. She kissed his forehead and tucked him in early that night. Then, with her heart thudding, she turned to Mrs. Perry and whispered, "This is my moment, isn't it?" The older woman nodded. "Just make sure he sees you, girl. Even if he doesn't understand. Make him see you." The bus ride into the city was long and quiet, winding through highways and fading memories. Amanda sat by the window, dressed in her catering uniform, her hair pulled into a neat bun. She stared out at the shifting landscape, her reflection in the glass almost unrecognizable. Her fingers gripped the strap of her bag, where she had tucked a photo of Tyler and the ribbon he once wore as a newborn. As the lights of the city blinked into view, her thoughts spiraled. She wasn't just heading to a wedding, she was walking into the life she was erased from. At one point, she closed her eyes and whispered, "I'm not here to destroy. I just want the truth to look him in the eye." Her voice trembled, but her resolve didn't waver. If Ronald would marry someone else, he'd do so with open eyes, knowing she had survived. Back home, Tyler had fallen asleep in Mrs. Perry's arms after an evening of giggles and bedtime stories. Before leaving, Amanda had knelt beside him and said softly, "Tomorrow, I'm going somewhere important. I'll be back before breakfast." Tyler had looked up, sleep already pulling at his eyes. "Is it about the man in the picture?" Amanda had hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, baby, it is." He hadn't asked more. That boy, wise beyond his years, had simply hugged her and said, "Be careful." Now, on the edge of the world she once belonged to, Amanda stepped off the bus and walked the final blocks toward the Sterling estate. The gates loomed ahead like sentinels, and beyond them, lights twinkled across the grand property. She took a breath, straightened her shoulders, and walked into the night with the poise of someone who had known death and chosen life instead. The Sterling estate was nothing short of opulence. Twinkling fairy lights draped the trees, soft violins played in the garden, and white roses lined the path to the ballroom. Guests arrived in sleek cars, dripping with wealth and rehearsed grace. Amanda moved among the catering crew like a shadow, dressed in a plain black uniform with a tray in her hands. Her posture was composed, but her heart raced beneath the fabric. Every footstep across the marble floors echoed memories of laughter in corners, of whispered promises near the piano, of belonging. She hadn't seen Ronald yet, but she could feel his presence, like a current in the air. As she passed the grand staircase, she spotted Josephine, regal in navy blue, accepting congratulations with a practiced smile. Amanda's stomach turned. She's still in control, she thought, but not for long. Inside the ballroom, Sylvia beamed beside Ronald, greeting guests like royalty. Her ivory gown shimmered beneath the chandelier, and her voice was poised and elegant. Ronald, on the other hand, looked polished but distracted, his eyes scanning the room too often, his smile wavering when he thought no one was watching. Amanda hovered near the wine table, breathing slowly, her gaze catching glimpses of the man she once knew. "Rhonda, keep moving," one of the floor managers hissed as they passed. She nodded and resumed her steps, weaving through laughter and champagne with the composure of someone haunted. When she finally reached the edge of the head table, her hands trembled ever so slightly. She steadied the tray, took a breath, and prepared to walk forward. The moment was approaching, not with thunder or applause, but in the quiet way fate returns what was stolen. The tray balanced in her hands held 4 glasses of red wine, one of them destined for the man who had unknowingly buried her. Amanda stepped forward slowly, each step purposeful, each breath sharp. She placed one glass before Sylvia, who barely acknowledged her. Then, moving to Ronald, her fingers brushed the stem of the glass. Their eyes met, time fractured. Ronald froze, his gaze locking onto hers like a man seeing a ghost rise from the earth. Amanda's face remained still, but her eyes, those eyes, were unmistakable. He blinked once, twice, his mouth opened slightly. "Amanda," he breathed, voice cracking. The tray in her hand shook, and she stepped back before anyone else could notice. Her body screamed to run, but her legs carried her out of the ballroom in silence. Ronald stood abruptly, ignoring Sylvia's confused whisper. "Ronald, what is it?" He didn't answer. He pushed past chairs, past startled guests, his heart slamming against his ribs. Amanda moved swiftly through the corridor, breath ragged, heels echoing against marble. She wasn't ready. She had only come to be seen, not to speak. But he was following. She turned the corner, and he caught up. "Wait!" he called, his voice ragged with disbelief. Amanda stopped slowly, turning to face him. Her voice came low, almost like a ghost slipping between walls. "I'm not dead," Ronald's world tilted. He reached forward but didn't touch her, afraid she'd disappear again.
"How?" he whispered.
Amanda looked at him with eyes filled with 5 years of pain. "Ask your mother." Then she walked away, leaving him frozen under the chandelier's glow, haunted not by a ghost, but by the truth she carried in her eyes. Ronald stood in the corridor long after Amanda disappeared, his chest heaving as though he had run a marathon. His mind could barely process the moment. Amanda, alive. His hand trembled as he leaned against the wall, her voice echoing over and over. "Ask your mother." He had seen confusion before, had lived through grief, but nothing compared to this paralyzing realization. She hadn't been a hallucination. Her eyes, those were real, her presence undeniable. Slowly, he turned and walked back toward the ballroom. But everything looked different. The crowd now felt like a blur, the celebration like a performance he no longer recognized. Sylvia approached him immediately. "Ronald, where did you go? You look pale." He stared at her, disoriented. "She's alive." Sylvia frowned. "Who?" His throat tightened. "Amanda." The name tasted like resurrection. Sylvia's face shifted from confusion to dread. "Ronald, are you feeling all right?" Security was discreetly called when Amanda didn't return to the service station. Ronald rushed to intervene. "Let her go," he told the team. "No questions, no calls, just let her leave." He stepped outside into the cool night air, trying to catch his breath, every memory unraveling into questions. Had she been hiding? Why hadn't she reached out? Why now? As the music inside resumed, Ronald pulled his phone from his pocket and stared at it blankly. There was no one to call, because the one person who could give him answers had just vanished again. He had buried her. He had mourned her. And now she stood in his mind like a living question. Somewhere deep inside, he already knew. This wasn't just about Amanda being alive. This was about secrets wrapped in the one place he'd never dared to question. His own family. Sylvia paced the dressing room, one hand clutching her phone, the other gripping her bouquet so tightly that petals fell to the carpet. "I knew something was off," she hissed to her maid of honor. "He's been distant all week, but this is something else." Her voice cracked. She stormed out into the corridor, heels echoing sharply until she reached Ronald, who stood frozen by the glass doors. "Ronald, what happened?" she asked, desperation bleeding through her carefully curated calm. He turned to her, eyes raw. Amanda was here. Sylvia's body stiffened. "Amanda, you're telling me she, what? Crashed our wedding?" He didn't answer, only stared through her like she was a wall between him and something more important. "Is this your way of backing out?" she demanded. "Because if it is, just say it." Josephine appeared at the sound of the raised voices. "What's going on?" she asked coolly. Ronald turned slowly toward her. "You tell me," he said, voice low. "She told me to ask you." Josephine faltered. "Who?" He took a step closer. "Amanda." The color drained from her face. For a moment, the formidable woman looked rattled, then it vanished behind her usual mask. "Ronald, you're clearly overwhelmed. You've been under stress. Don't gaslight me," he snapped, his voice rising for the first time. "Don't you dare tell me I imagined her." Sylvia's voice cut in again. "You left me at the altar for a ghost, Ronald." He looked between them, his fiancée fuming, his mother silent, and a secret that had just split the ground beneath all their feet. "I have to find her," he said simply, then turned and walked away, leaving his wedding unraveling behind him. Josephine found him in his father's old study, a place she rarely visited. Ronald stood behind the desk, holding a dusty photo album, one that Amanda had once flipped through with wonder years ago. "I'm only going to ask once," he said, voice quiet but firm. "Is she alive because of you?" Josephine closed the door behind her and clasped her hands together. "I did what needed to be done." The air between them shifted, like a blade drawn too quickly. "What does that mean?" Ronald asked, eyes narrowing. "It means," she replied, voice trembling for the first time, "that I saw what you couldn't. She was a danger to your name, your future, your legacy." His hand slammed onto the desk. "You had her taken?" She said nothing. Her silence was confirmation. His face went pale. "You drugged her. Leet. Faked her death." "She would have ruined you," Josephine snapped, her composure crumbling. "You were going to throw your life away for someone with no family, no power, no protection. I couldn't let you." Ronald stared at her, eyes wide with disbelief. "You stole 5 years of my life. 5 years of hers. You made me bury her." His voice cracked at the last word. Josephine reached out, but he recoiled. "I was saving you," she whispered. "No," he growled, stepping back. "You were saving your image, your idea of perfection." His hands shook as he pressed them to his face. "She told me to ask you," she knew. "And now I do too." He turned to the door. "If you ever cared about me at all, don't follow me." Josephine sank into the nearest chair, her empire crumbling in her silence. And Ronald? He was no longer a son trying to please his mother. He was a man finally choosing the truth over the lie he'd been raised in. Morning light spilled across the pavement as Ronald stood near the Sterling estate gates, staring into the quiet street beyond. He hadn't slept. After the confrontation with his mother, he had driven through half the city chasing memories, every turn leading him back to Amanda's face. He didn't know where to begin looking until a sleek catering van pulled up to the curb. Robert stepped out, eyebrows lifting at the sight of him. "You Sterling?" he asked gruffly. Ronald nodded. "I need to find her. Please." Robert studied him carefully. "You don't even know the whole story yet." "Then tell me," Ronald pleaded. Robert hesitated, then motioned to the van. "Get in." As they drove, Robert explained how Amanda had asked for just one shift, no attention, no trouble. "She didn't come to ruin anything. She came to be seen," Robert added. Then he paused. "She didn't come alone, either." The van stopped in front of a modest home tucked between tall hedges. Amanda stood by the porch, watching them approach with arms folded. The small boy peeked out from behind her, clutching a toy airplane. Ronald stepped out slowly, his gaze locking on Amanda, then dropping to the child. Amanda knelt and whispered something in Tyler's ear. The boy hesitated, then stepped forward, his eyes mirroring the same quiet intensity Ronald saw in the mirror every morning. "His name is Tyler," Amanda said softly. "He's 5, Ronald's breath caught. He knelt down, tears welling as he looked at the boy who carried his features, his brows, his strength. I'm your," but the words died in his throat. Tyler tilted his head curiously. "Are you the man from the photo?" Amanda stepped beside them. "He's your father." Ronald choked back a sob. "And you're my son." The silence between them wasn't broken by words, but by a small hand reaching into his, warm and forgiving. Ronald returned to the Sterling estate only once more, just long enough to pack a bag and deliver his resignation letter to the board. Josephine was waiting in the atrium, a silk robe wrapped tightly around her as if armor could still protect her dignity. "You can't just walk away from all of this," she said, voice sharp. Ronald zipped his suitcase calmly. "I already did." Her eyes narrowed. "You'll lose everything." He turned to face her. "You already took everything that ever mattered." She stepped forward, her expression softening. "Ronald, I made a mistake, but you're still my son." He shook his head. "No, you buried your son the day you buried Amanda's name. I'm not him anymore." He walked to the door, then paused. "You wanted me to be the perfect heir, but I'd rather be a present father." With that, he left and didn't look back. Amanda watched from the front window as Ronald's car pulled into her driveway, the sun setting behind him in brilliant hues. He stepped out without a coat, just a simple shirt and tired eyes. Tyler ran out to meet him, throwing his arms around his waist. Amanda remained still on the porch until he approached. "You left it all," she said softly. Ronald nodded. "None of it felt like mine after I saw you." She searched his face for regret, but found only truth. "I don't want your pity," she whispered. "I'm not here out of guilt," he replied. "I'm here because I want to learn how to deserve you both." Amanda didn't respond immediately. Instead, she opened the door and stepped aside. "Then start by coming in, not taking over." He smiled faintly. "Deal." Inside, the light was soft, the air warm, and for the first time in years, Ronald felt like he was exactly where he belonged. The first few weeks were uneasy. Ronald moved into a small rental 2 streets away, not wanting to intrude, but close enough to be part of Tyler's daily life. He walked him to school, learned how to braid breakfast toast into funny shapes, and sat through every cartoon with wide-eyed attention. Amanda kept her boundaries firm, never cold but never naive. "You're here now," she told him one evening as they folded laundry together. "But showing up once doesn't erase 5 years of absence." Ronald nodded, folding a tiny sock. "I know. I'm not asking to pick up where we left off. I just want to build something from where we are." Amanda studied him for a long moment before speaking again. "Then understand it'll take time. And I won't let Tyler get hurt." Ronald's voice was quiet. "Neither will I." Over shared meals and sidewalk walks, the ice between them began to thin. Tyler started asking for Ronald at bedtime. He told his teachers, proudly, "That's my dad," and insisted on holding both his parents' hands when they walked together. Amanda watched all of it from a cautious distance. Her heart wanted to trust again, but history weighed heavily. One evening, as rain fell gently outside, Ronald brought over a photo album. "There are things about me you never got to know," he said. They spent the evening flipping pages, his childhood, his father's funeral, even baby pictures Amanda had never seen. It was the first time she saw Ronald not as the man who had lost her, but as the boy who had once been lost himself. Amanda leaned back in her chair, exhaling deeply. "We're not who we were," she said. Ronald looked at her gently. "Maybe that's our second chance." It was a sunlit afternoon at the neighborhood park when Amanda spotted them from across the field. Ronald crouched in the sandpit, helping Tyler construct an elaborate fort from plastic shovels and imagination. She sat quietly on a bench beneath the jacaranda tree, sipping lukewarm tea from a flask, watching the two of them laugh. There was a softness in Ronald now, a gentleness she had never seen even in their early days. Tyler's giggles echoed across the grass as he piled more sand atop the wobbly tower. "Dad, you're making it crooked," he exclaimed, voice filled with joy. Ronald feigned offense. "Excuse me? I'll have you know I'm an architectural genius." Amanda chuckled softly to herself. It was the first time she had heard Tyler call him that without being prompted. "Dad," it landed like music, like healing. Later, as Ronald wiped dirt from Tyler's hands and helped him to the swing, he glanced toward Amanda and met her gaze. She nodded for him to come over, while Tyler kicked his feet into the wind. They sat in silence for a moment, the air between them full of something fragile. "He called you Dad today," she said softly. Ronald swallowed. "I heard. I didn't know what to say." Amanda looked down at her hands. "You didn't have to say anything. You earned it." Ronald shifted on the bench. "I keep wondering if there's a way to make this whole again. If there's even a version of life where you and I..." Amanda held up her hand gently. "Let's not rush it. I've learned to live in the present." He nodded slowly, then turned his attention back to Tyler, who was now flying like a superhero on the swing. "Present looks pretty perfect to me," he said, and this time Amanda didn't disagree. Months later, on a quiet Sunday, Amanda set up a picnic table beneath the wide shade of an old tree at the park. She laid out slices of yam pie, roasted chicken, jollof rice, and Tyler's favorite coconut biscuits. Ronald arrived carrying a bouquet of small sunflowers, Amanda's favorite. "They're not from a florist," he said sheepishly. "I picked them from a neighbor's garden, with permission." Amanda smirked. "Look at you following rules now." Tyler came bounding over with a toy plane in hand. "We need a runway, Dad." Ronald knelt in the grass, drawing lines with a stick. Amanda spread a blanket and sat watching them, her chest filled with something warm and steady, not fireworks, but the slow, kind flame of peace. As they sat down to eat, Tyler insisted on saying grace. "Thank you for food and swings and my mom and dad, and for the day that started sad but ended happy," he said, eyes squeezed shut. Amanda blinked back tears, her hand brushing Ronald's across the table. No tuxedos, no wedding dress, no speeches or rings. Just 3 people rebuilding what had been broken with quiet gestures and honest moments. Across town in a tall, cold mansion, Josephine sat alone at a grand dining table set for no one, staring at a framed photo of a wedding that never happened. Her legacy had survived, but her son had walked away from it, choosing love over control. Back under the old tree, Amanda passed Ronald a plate. "You can stay for dinner if you want," she said casually. He smiled. I was hoping you'd ask. The future didn't need a label yet. For now, it was enough that they were all at the same table, together, and finally whole. The end Bible verse for the story. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. John 1 verse 5 NIV. This verse reflects Amanda's journey through betrayal, loss, and exile, yet still emerging with dignity and truth. Despite the lies meant to erase her, the light of her truth could not be extinguished. Her quiet return, not in anger, but in truth and strength, allowed justice and healing to unfold. Moral of the story: truth, though buried, never dies. No matter how deeply lies are planted or how far someone is pushed into the shadows, the truth has a quiet strength that outlives deceit. Real love is not built on legacy, control, or appearances. It is seen in sacrifice, forgiveness, and the courage to face the past. In the end, peace comes not from revenge, but from reclaiming your voice and choosing healing, even when it hurts. That's the end of the story. What did you learn from this story? Drop your thoughts in the comment section. Leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on post notification so that you'll be notified whenever we drop our next videos. Also, share this video to someone who might be interested. Thank you so much for watching.